So one important thing that would be great for simple content creators is autofocus. The Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 4K is manual focus. It is focused on that chair right there. Meanwhile, the Sony, if it is working correctly, is focusing on my face, while the Pocket 4K is not. As you can see, that is a very big draw for Sony, because Pocket 4K would not be able to focus since it is a cinema camera. It's not made for people who are just vlogging, although they include a record button on the front, which makes almost no sense. Let's take a look at what the iPhone looks like when it comes to vlogging. So when walking and doing these same sorts of tests, the iPhone has one clear advantage when it comes to vlogging, and this is an iPhone 12 Pro. The advantage is that it has a screen so you can see yourself. The screen flips around, unlike the A7R4 or the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 4K. It is somewhat stabilized, although not the best. It does have a flaw where if you point it at a source of light, the flares can get rather intense, as you see right there. But it keeps auto exposure well and keeps focus okay, because the front camera is always in focus. Let's switch to the back camera and see if the quality is any better. So the back camera has focusing, auto-focusing, because it's a larger sensor than the front camera. Now, it still has, as you see, insane flares. Crazy flares. It's like a mini sun dancing around. But, of course, problem with using the better of the cameras, which is front camera, you'd have to get a mirror or monitor for a phone, which is not ideal in these days where you don't want to have a giant clamp on your phone with a monitor. At that point, you'd probably just want to get a better camera. So yeah, that's what it looks like vlogging. Tell me how the stabilization is, and tell me what you think in the comments about this. Let's move on to cinematic picture quality. So, cinematic image quality for filmmakers. This one is filming at 23.98 frames per second. This one is filming at 24. So, the Pocket Cinema Camera 4K can actually film at a true 24 frames per second and a true Cinema 4K for great quality. Meanwhile, the Sony can only film at 4K up to 30, and also does not have actual full rounded number frame rates. It only has the dropped frames like most people are used to on cameras. That is not a big deal in most spaces, but if you are going for pro level image quality, that is a big deal. So what does the footage look like right now? I have the Sony on autofocus and the Blackmagic on manual focus, because it's all manual. And the Sony is recording on 8-bit, and the Blackmagic is recording on 12-bit. 12-bit RAW, 8-bit MP4. So, I'm going to grade it right now. Simple grade. I didn't put any weird colors in it. I just upped the saturation, did my usual stuff to maximize the image. And yeah, tell me what you think it looks like. Is the Sony falling apart like many say? Is the Blackmagic handing it his ass? Well, that's for you guys to decide. Now, I am having the Sony in autofocus right now, tracking my face. And autofocus is not to be understated in filmmaking sometimes, because sometimes it is hard to rack focus with a shot, especially if you have an individual filmmaker rather than a handyman on the side that has his own monitor just to focus. So while the cinema camera is manual focused on me right now, here, and the Sony is autofocusing on me right here, hopefully, and not focusing on the background like a Panasonic, if I were to not have stuff fall out of my pocket, no, but if I were to go like this, the Sony will follow me.
The Blackmagic, however, will not. So, yeah.
So cinematic images with an iPhone. It can film at 4K at 24. This is probably 23.98, just like the Sony. The autofocus is brilliant. It's actually really darn good. As you see, it has lens flares, which are not the best, which can be a problem if you're going to do any effects. And more importantly, the iPhone cannot be put into manual mode unless you get a separate app called Filmic Pro. And Filmic Pro is a paid app and can only use the main camera. With this, you get the option of 3 cameras. Let's take a look at them now. You have the 2.5x camera, which can record very zoomed in. Works well for what it does. For instance, here's the chair that I was sitting in earlier. And it also has a wide camera. This is the wide camera. It is the worst of the bunch, honestly. It cannot focus at all. But that doesn't really need to, because it has the smallest sensor, which basically means everything's in focus. The iPhone is fully automatic, no changing settings. All you can change is resolution, frame rate, and lens. Tell me what you think about this test. And yeah, we're going to now move on to some dynamic range tests. Let's go. Dynamic range. So, there's the sun up there. Dark bushes right there. My eye can see all this, because an eye has 20 stops dynamic range. Sony claims 15 stops with S-Log3, and a similar number with HLG3, which is what I'm using since it is the best profile to color grade with the 8-bit codec. Blackmagic claims 13 stops. So let's see if this one is better than this one. This all could do with RAW too, because RAW has a highlight recovery option, which will basically let me click and bring back some of the stuff that was clipped. So let's see how these guys do, and then we'll switch the iPhone and see how it does. So, this is the dynamic range you can get. Let's take a look at the bushes. This is the dynamic range of the iPhone. We will test on all 3 cameras. So, to my eye, it looks rather good. That is because it is doing HDR, tone mapping straight into the file, rather than any log profile. So, this is on the standard main camera, the 1x zoom. Let's test the 0.5x zoom now. This is the 0.5x zoom. Still looks rather good, but the bushes look darker. And then let's try the 2.5x zoom. 2.5x zoom does not fare as well here, since it is actually somewhat blowing out the sky and getting heavy lens flares straight from the sun. So yeah, tell me what you think in the comments about this. Okay, so high frame rate. How will this fare? I will drop this tennis ball and we'll see who wins. Sony can record HD at up to 120. Blackmagic can record 2.6K at up to 120. And the iPhone, right here, can record full HD up to 240. Although the Blackmagic is with a crop. So let's see how they fare on this. Alright, tennis ball time. Here we go. 3, 2, 1.
And there you go. That's the slow motion in a nutshell. This is the low light test. Right now, both of the more professional cameras are set at equivalent ISOs. This one is set at 2.8, which on Micro Four Thirds is 5.6. So I set this one on 5.6. Both are at 25,600, right there. And the only source of light from this room is that door and this window. So this is how the iPhone handles it on the standard lens, which is it has the largest sensor, so we're giving it the best run for its money. The ultra wide camera, as I'll show you right now, is horrible in low light. So let's close that door and see how they really do in very low light. Okay, so here it is in very low light. Tell me what you think. Which one's the cleanest? Now we will apply noise reduction to all three, and here you go. What do you think of it now? Look better? Can any of these be passable for low light cameras? Tell me what you think. Let's move on to the conclusion. So down here in the basement, I'm going to bring up some final points about these cameras. The iPhone and the cinema camera right over there can both record 4K at 60 frames per second, but the cinema camera has a trick up its sleeve. It can also record cinema 4K and scope 4K, but scope 4K can be recorded at up to 75 frames per second, which is amazing. And don't underestimate the power. The Blackmagic Pocket Cinema camera, you can change white balance and ISO in post because of RAW. Now, you'd think the RAW files would be way larger than any of the files from the Sony, and you'd be right. But compared to some other cameras like the Panasonic GH5 and others like that, they're actually comparable in size for RAW quality, although they do need a bit of sharpening and definitely need color grading in post. So, to conclude, I hope that you enjoyed this video. It's a big insight. It is a sequel to my previous video on the same topic, and hope you hit that subscribe button and comment down below. Have a nice day.